Modding is an important part of Unturned, but only known by some tutorials. So today, I'll be showing you how to create buildings. This will be a part of a larger series in modding, so if you want to see more of the series, make sure to like, subscribe, and share. So, let's begin. Before starting, it's very important to have these programs and presets ready. Blender. This is what most modders use, and is generally used for its high performance, and it's free. Blender is a 3D modeling software where you can make your models and you can export them to Unity so you can make them into Unturned. People can also use Sketchfab, Autodesk, and Maya, but these are generally not free and these cost quite a lot of money. And Blender is generally easier and used by most modders, so I generally stick with Blender. Another important thing you will need is Unity, a specific version of Unity that is 2019.4.30. It's important to have Unity because it's the game's game engine and in order to actually implement your model into the game. Next, you will need Paint.net. This is a free software for 2D visuals and making textures. So if you want textured items and models, make sure to get Paint.net. It's free. However, you can use GIMP or Photoshop that are good alternatives. Next is Notepad++. It's not exactly required, but it's very helpful with organising your files, your .dat files, and your English.dat files. Once you have all of these, let's start. Now, let's begin. This tutorial is assuming that you have already made your model and its materials are ready. If this is not the case, you should watch a video on how to actually make a model and the basics of Blender and all that stuff so you can actually make a model. This tutorial is going to be primarily focused on actually implementing your models, your items, and that stuff into the game. So that's the disclaimer. Now, firstly, what I like to do is, before actually importing everything into here, is I like to actually import the example assets and the project Unity assets. Now, these two are very important because without these you can't actually import your items or your models into the game. Now, you come over here to the Unturned file and you go to bundles and then into sources. Now, over here are two packages, the example assets package and the project.unity package. Now, these two packages are very important because with these you can have the example assets. What this is used for is seeing the vanilla items, the objects, and you can copy them and you can see how they use LODs, how they use animation, so that's very nice. And the project.unity package, that contains your master bundling tools, your bundling tools, your .content tools, your asset bundles, and that's important to actually put it into the game. So you can double press on them while having your project open and that will import them. But I already have all that imported. So I'm just gonna actually put my model and my texture into here. Now, an important thing when making your items or your models is to have your textures be to the power of 2. What does this mean? It means that they should always be either 2x2, 1x1, or something that is 2 squared or 2 cubed, etc. Because if it's not, it might lead to weird visual effects of the materials. So I'm going to have my texture here, I'm just going to import it. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to import my object. Come over here and have your FBX that I call tutorial. And it's over here. Now what we want to do is we want to change a few settings. First of all, over here at materials, you change it from use embedded materials to use external materials. In animation, make it from import animation to not import animation, from model to not convert units. Then you press apply. Over here at the texture, what we want to do is you press it you press bilinear over here on the filter mode, and you want to set it to point no filter. A wrap mode, you want to make it into clamp. Turn on read write enabled and turn the compression none, and then apply. And then materials here, you want to turn off specular highlights. Now sometimes when you're making foliage, and sometimes it may not exactly match up with your grass, that could be an issue related with the albedo. Now, if that's the case, what you can do is turn it up from this greyish colour to completely white. But that's not an issue here. Now, if everything's right and you put your tutorial FBX into the hierarchy, it should be pretty big. Now, what you can do is you press over here, you right click, you press reset. Then you want to turn it to be -90. And here you have your nice little building. Now, we want to start off by making 3 different game objects. And let's quickly rename this to model 00 to make everything easier. Firstly, we want to add 2 tags onto here. Large and large again. Now to the 3 game objects. You want to turn all of these, reset them, and turn the rotation to -90. I want to call one of them object, the other one flip, and the other one called nav, short for nav mesh. The object here is your object and how it interacts with the world. The clip is how it interacts in multiplayer with colliders, etc. The nav is how it works with zombies and how the zombies react with it. And so the tags and layers you need for both of these are object and clip. We'll use once again large and large. The nav or the nav mesh, we'll use nav mesh and nav mesh for there. Now here you press unpack prefab and you want to drag it down into the object. Now on all of these you need to add a mesh collider. This is the main collider. The object and clip, select a material. What is a material? It's not exactly this texture, but it's how when you punch it or hit it, how it interacts. You have many options. The dynamic is for moving objects like cloths and tarps, and the static is for your hard, your solid objects. Now I'm going to select, of course, tile static because it's more of a tile object, and for the nav and everything else, the mesh, you want to come over here, press this arrow icon and drag it into here. Make sure you don't add a material, your tile static, to the nav mesh. I have this ready. Next, on the object, you want to add an LOD. What are LODs? Now, LODs are these iterations, these versions of your mesh that when you're further away from them, they change in how they look. Now your LOD 0 is how it looks like when you're about, very close to it. The LOD 1 should be a mesh without, your window frame and your door frames, and your LOD 2 or your skybox will be just a solid cube with the color of your mesh. But for this video, I didn't do LODs because you can see how they are in the core master bundle. Now I'm going to delete LOD 1 and LOD 2. Don't delete them if you are making LODs. I'm going to turn all of this to 3%. I'm going to add this model 00. And now when you zoom out far enough, you won't be able to see this. That's how it's going to work. Now let's just come in closer. Right here, at this stage, it's ready to export, but it's good practice to add rigid bodies to your objects. You add a rigid body and you turn off gravity, and that's generally what you can do. These are the settings that you are. These are the bare minimum settings that you need for exporting your object. Now let's move on to making your DAT files, your Unity 3D files, and your master bundling. Now, what is master bundling? Let's say you're making a group of, I don't know, 50 or 20 objects or items. If you want to quickly, make them into your map without, individually importing the Unity 3Ds, you can do that. But now, one more thing to mention is slots. When you're making a object in Unturned, when you place down these objects and go into the game itself, you can see that there is a option and there is a way to actually place down doors, gates, hatches, and windows. Now, how to do these? What you do is you add a slot prefab. This slot prefab allows Unity to recognize that there should be an area where windows can be placed. So Unity recognizes that, and then it transfers it into the data, and then it tells Unturned that there should be an ability to place windows there, and then you can place it. So where are we going to get slots prefab from? We're going to steal it from the core master bundle, objects, large, buildings, 50, and then we're going to see this slots prefab. We're going to drag it up here, and then we're going to begin to edit it to suit our needs. We're going to remove the ones that we don't need. So for example, we don't need the gate, and we don't need 2 doors, so we're going to delete those 3. Before you do that, make sure to unpack your prefab. I should have done that, and you delete that. Now, both of these have the tag and layer called logic that's needed if you're just going to make it by yourself. I suggest you don't, and you just copy it, but it's up to you. Now, you want to go into the orthographic view. So over here on your axis, you want to press the Y, and then you press this nice little cube in the middle. Now here you can rotate it by 90 degrees. And then over here you just want to move it to the area where your door frame is. Now a neat trick is that when you zoom in like this, you can have a nice indication of where your slot should be. And then you just want to drag it to right in the middle over here. And then come over here so you can actually edit it on this axis too, and make sure it's not broken on the other axis and fixed on one. And just kind of edit it like that. And boom, that's nice and central there. Now the slot is the term for the window, and we're just going to size it to fit our needs. So we're just going to move it down over here. We're just going to size it a little down. Keep on doing this till you get your desired size. Now you take it down again, and here you go back to the upper view, the top view, and here you just want to move it back up. So from here you just slot it into the individual frames that you have. And then over here, another neat thing you can do is you do Control-C, Control-V, and you can copy and paste that. Make sure they're not called slot brackets 1, because then it won't work. Just rename it to slot. Then you just turn that on its 90-degree pivot, and then just move it to the central position over here. And then one more. I'm going to copy and paste that, call it slots, and then put it over here. And now we have all of our slots done. And now hopefully you should be able to place down the windows and the doors and the gates and the hatches in game. Now we're going to go back to our tutorial folder, our object tutorial shop, and then put our slots back. Now if you haven't already, you can export this tutorial shop _00 file once again. So you can just press Windows, Unturned, Bundle, grab, and you can bundle it in the specified file you choose. So over here, I'm just gonna bundle it over here in tutorial shop 00. And you can just bundle it, and then there should be an option here to bundle, and you press it again, and then it's gonna bundle. Now let's move on to how the error logs are and how it looks like in game. Now coming over to your unturned folders, over here is maps. Now you can either paste the Unity 3D and do the same processes that I do following this. You can do the same thing in the core master bundle, or you can just put it into a map and that object will only be visible in that map's editor. I'm just going to do it with the map style. Now I'm just going to go on this map I created. It's called Tarkov, and you want to create a bundles file. This bundles file will be the equivalent to the file that you made in Unity called tutorial. And then when you press on this, you want to make a file that precedes the item or model itself. So simply, you have this object file over here that should link up with the object file you have over here. So if we sort of make an analogy, the tutorial is your map, the assets folder here is Unturned. So Unturned, Tarkov, objects, and then under objects in the folder, you'll make a folder called tutorial shop 00. Let's go on objects, and we have a folder here that I made called tutorial shop 00. Now I already made some DATs in here, but we're going to delete those. We can go back to Unturned, the bundles, and here are all the example files. So you want to go to objects, large, buildings, and find an object. Now, of course, if you're making an object like, let's say, an animated watermill or something else, you can use different .dats. But here, I'm just going to use these default .dats for most buildings. I'm going to Control C, that copies them. I go back to Unturned, and I press Maps. I press Tarkov. I press Bundles. And then my object, and over here, I press Control V. And then what is very important is you have to rename everything to just match exactly with your Unity. So here I have this file called tutorial shop 00. Here is also called tutorial shop 00. They must be exactly the same, or you will be getting a game object error. So you come up here, you rename this .dat to tutorial shop 00 or whatever you're making, and the English.DAT will just stay the same. Now you press on this, and you have two options. You have your GID and your ID. These three are not that important. Now, LED meshes for making LEDs, and we didn't make any LEDs, so we're going to delete those. Now, what's a material palette? Let's say in the editor you have these objects, and you don't want to make separate objects for different objects that have the same material. Like if they're the same object but have different materials. So what people do is they make them into material palettes, and whenever you spawn them, like let's say you spawn one, that's a grey version, and when you spawn the same object again, it gives you a red version. But we haven't made material palettes, so we're going to remove this. And here we have GUID, type, and ID over here. We want to keep the type of the same because that's your building. And the GID and ID you want to delete because we're going to have to change these. Now, a very nice site you can go to make GUIDs is free online GUID generator. You can make GUIDs here. So what you want to do is you want to press over here that removes the hyphens. You want to Control C when you made your GUID, and you Control V, copy and paste it. Now, the IDs. It's crucial that your IDs are not between ID 0 and ID 30,000 because these are the general, the IDs that vanilla content and some curated maps use. So if you're further away from the ID bound of the vanilla objects and curated content, that's good. but be aware that the maximum ID range is 65,000. So make it between 30,000 and 65,000. I was going to make it 40,000 to play safe, so it's for average. I'm going to press Control S, that's a hotkey to save it, or you can just go over here to File and press Save. Now to your English.DAT. Over here, you can change it from apartment #1 to tutorial shop #1 and Control Save. Now that's finished for making your .dats and customizing how they function. Now you want to move on to making your Unity 3D. What we do is we go back to Unity, we go to Objects, and before actually making it into Unity 3D, we need to make sure that we have all of these, right? And we put them back into here. So you just drag them into here, and into here, and into here, and it's all done. So you want to go back to Object, and you want to press on this tutorial shop 00. You go up here to Window, Unturned, and then the bundle tool, and then you press Grab. Then you press Bundle Tutorial Shop, and then you select where you want this bundle is Unity 3D to go. You can go up to here, Tutorial Shop. This is where we, actually made the thing. So you go to Bundles, Object, Tutorial Shop, and then you can just save it over here. And then it's gonna start bundling. Now let's move on to how it seems in game and the different error messages that you can get and what they mean. One last thing that's important when making your .dat files is to add an exclude from master bundle tagline. Now, if you're using a Unity 3D file, like I did previously, make sure to add this, because if you don't, it will be linked in the master bundle and you will get a missing game object error. So you come over here and you paste exclude underscore from master bundle underscore master bundle. Now that you've done this, we can move on to the error messages and how it looks like in game. So let's go. In Unturned, if your object is not working, there normally is a section in the workshop tab where you can see the various error logs that you may have. So for example, if you have a missing game object error log, this could be because of a missing exclude from master bundle, your bundles files don't match up, or your Unity version is wrong. Another GUID problem or an error log problem is that if your IDs are clashing, it will display something like this. If we come to the error logs, it says something like object asset bar 00 long GUID is already taken by this. Now this indicates that your GUID is already taken by the other object, so you're gonna have to change one of them. Another issue is fail to analyze, etc. This means that your GUID hasn't pasted correctly, or you have the wrong GUID. And another error log is that your short ID, your 6-digit or your 4-digit ID is not working. So for example, you get this error. And that is all the error logs and everything that you need to know for making objects. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to like, subscribe and hit the share button. And note that I will be making more modding tutorials in the future. So if you want to keep up to date, make sure to like and subscribe so you can see more. And if you have any questions, leave them in the comments below.